Beyond the battlefield, the Six-Day War's shadow. How a six-day victory rewired the Middle East. What if the most decisive military victory in modern history didn't solve a conflict, but instead guaranteed decades of war? On the surface, the Six-Day War of June 1967 looks like a textbook example of military genius. A lightning-fast campaign where Israel, against all odds, shattered the combined forces of Egypt, Syria, and Jordan in less than a week. It was a stunning achievement. But the real story isn't about the tanks, the jets, or the captured territories. It's about the seismic political, psychological, and cultural aftershocks that followed, reshaping the geopolitical map of the Middle East and laying the groundwork for every conflict you read about today. The Six-Day War ended in a decisive military win, but its consequences, from the birth of the modern Palestinian resistance to the rise of regional superpowers, are the true, enduring history. For the next 20 minutes, we're not focusing on how Israel won, but on how the victory fundamentally changed the world and why those 6 days still cast a very long shadow. The new map. The geopolitical consequences of a lightning war. The most immediate and tangible outcome of the war was the radical transformation of the map. Israel, a country that entered the war with a narrow, often indefensible border, emerged with control over vast new territories. The Gaza Strip and the Sinai Peninsula from Egypt, the West Bank and East Jerusalem from Jordan, and the Golan Heights from Syria. This massive land acquisition was the engine that drove all subsequent geopolitical turmoil. Suddenly, Israel had a territorial depth that vastly improved its strategic defense, but at the cost of occupying over 1 million Palestinian and Arab citizens. This single fact, the military control over the territories, became the central, unsolvable issue of the Arab-Israeli conflict. The war shifted the core issue from one of mere recognition and border security to one of occupation and self-determination. The land gained in a swift military campaign became a political and diplomatic anchor, dragging down all efforts for peace. Furthermore, the defeat was a catastrophic blow to the traditional, secular Arab nationalism championed by leaders like Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser. His pan-Arab ideology, which promised to unite the Arab world and defeat Israel, was utterly humiliated. This deep disillusionment created a power vacuum, effectively discrediting secular politics and paving the way for the rise of alternative, often more radical ideologies, namely political Islam. The failure of the state to achieve victory led many to look toward religious conviction for salvation and resistance, a shift whose consequences are still felt today in the makeup of groups across the region. The balance of power in the Middle East was not just adjusted, it was fundamentally reversed, with Israel now the undisputed, though beleaguered, regional military superpower, supported staunchly by the United States, further hardening the divisions of the Cold War in the region.
If the map was transformed, the psychology of the region was even more profoundly fractured. For Israelis, the victory was perceived as a miraculous existential deliverance. Following a period of intense anxiety and mobilization before the war, the stunning speed and totality of the win fueled a deep sense of invincibility, military competence, and historical validation. This sense of providence hardened the resolve of many in the political sphere, fostering a belief that the newly captured territories were not just bargaining chips, but were historically integral parts of the Jewish homeland. This gave birth to the powerful and persistent settlement movement, which began to establish communities in the West Bank and Gaza, further cementing the occupation and making any future territorial compromise exponentially more difficult. Crucially, the war was a watershed moment for the Palestinian people. Before 1967, the Palestinian cause was largely subsumed under the agendas of the surrounding Arab states, which claimed to fight for them, but often treated the issue as a political tool.
the devastating defeat of the Arab armies proved that the Palestinians could not rely on external forces for their liberation. This spurred a profound internal reckoning, leading to the rebirth of an independent Palestinian national movement. The war effectively forced the Palestinian Liberation Organization, or PLO, to become an autonomous force, shifting its focus from relying on Arab state armies to launching its own guerrilla operations. The Six-Day War directly led to the rise of prominent resistance groups and the establishment of a fully independent national identity centered on resisting the occupation, ensuring that the conflict would move from state versus state warfare to a protracted, often asymmetrical struggle.
The Six-Day War was not a final peace.
It was merely a 6-day prelude to a much longer confrontation. The comprehensive nature of the Arab defeat made another war not just possible, but inevitable. The Arab world, specifically Egypt and Syria, could not accept the humiliation and the loss of territory, particularly the strategically vital Sinai Peninsula and Golan Heights. This immediate need to redress the balance led to a determined strategy of a war of attrition along the Suez Canal and ultimately the planning of the 1973 Yom Kippur War just 6 years later. The post-1967 military buildup and the desperate desire for revenge and the recovery of lost national dignity became the new driving force in Egyptian and Syrian foreign policy, overriding all other considerations. For Israel, the very victory that brought security also bred a dangerous form of strategic arrogance, or koncepcja. The military and intelligence establishment became dangerously overconfident, believing the Arab armies were incapable of launching a coordinated, successful attack and dismissing reports of unusual military movements. They fundamentally misjudged the morale and meticulous planning abilities of the new Egyptian leadership under Anwar Sadat. The vast territories captured, particularly the strategic Bar-Lev line of fortifications along the Suez Canal, were supposed to provide an impregnable defense, but they created a false sense of security that ultimately left Israel exposed to the devastating surprise attack of 1973. The Six-Day War's total success ironically masked a failure in long-term strategic thinking, proving that an overwhelming military victory does not negate the political will of a defeated enemy. It often fuels it. The 1967 victory was the necessary precursor to the 1973 war, the shock of which finally brought the region to the negotiating table for the first time, by providing both sides with the necessary psychological and political conditions to finally begin the difficult process of negotiating peace. Perhaps the most potent and enduring consequence of the war was the reunification of Jerusalem. East Jerusalem, including the Old City and the holiest sites in Judaism, such as the Western Wall, came under Israeli control. This act held immense religious and emotional significance for the Jewish people globally, ending 19 years of separation from sites of profound religious importance. However, this also placed one of Islam's 3 holiest sites, the Haram al-Sharif, or Temple Mount, under Israeli security control, while leaving the daily religious administration to a Muslim waqf, or trust. This decision, though intended as a compromise, permanently elevated the conflict to a deeply religious plane. By bringing all these contested holy spaces under a single authority, the war transformed a political and territorial dispute into a full-scale religious confrontation, where compromise is inherently more difficult because it is perceived as yielding sacred ground. The fate of Jerusalem and its holy sites remains the single most sensitive, intractable issue in the conflict, now loaded with religious and historical symbolism for 3 major world faiths. The Six-Day War did more than redraw borders. It redrew the emotional and spiritual landscape of the entire region, ensuring that any political solution would require navigating centuries of faith and historical memory. A challenge that remains as fraught today as it was in 1967. The ripple effects continue to influence global diplomacy and internal politics across the entire region, cementing the 1967 conflict not as a six-day event, but as the enduring, defining moment of the modern Middle East, the consequences of which we are still trying to understand and resolve. If you found this deep dive into the hidden consequences of the Six-Day War insightful, consider subscribing for more in-depth strategic and historical analyses.